Thank you. Thank you so much for this webinar and for organizing this. My lecture today is on collagen changes. And although it also does speak about the musculoskeletal element, we've got some very innovative work on the vertebral disc, which I'd like to share with you today. So we have been working on skin collagen changes for stages in menopause for a number of years now. One of my colleagues, Costello Branco, and myself, and I worked with Professor John Studd at King's College, had our first papers on the subject published in 1982 and later some seminal papers in 1985. We established early on that it was possible to have collagen changes to demonstrate skin collagen decreases with menopausal age, which were very similar to those that we had been seeing with bone and osteoporotic changes. So we know that bone decreases by about 30% after the menopause in women. And when looking at skin collagen, we had similar declines which hit a woman just after her menopause. So regardless of her age, it was the menopausal age, the deprivation of estrogens, which was leading to this sharp decline in skin collagen, in this case, after the menopause. Here you can see some of our earlier work, which shows cross-sectional data, and you can see that at various cohorts beyond the years since the menopause here, you can see the sharp decline that happens. Again, it lost about 30% of your collagen content, which stabilizes out and remains at about this level and declines slightly with age. However, in the top graph here, where you had women who were on HRT, you can see that women who were on implants, in this case, retained their skin collagen content. So that you had women here who are 15 years post-menopausal, had only been on HRT for 2 years, but had collagen content that were similar to premenopausal women. And this gave us the first inkling it was possible to increase your collagen content after your menopause, even if you had lost it. This was before we were able to demonstrate that you could also replace bone in a similar fashion. Then we had our prospective studies looking at women who are given an estrogen implant, and their skin thickness as a whole was measured. So this is a measure not just of collagen, but also of glucosaminoGlycans and water content in the dermis. We're looking here at the dermis, not at the epidermis. And we could measure the skin content and see sharp rises to about 6 months, which then leveled off. Now at 6 months, women here had another estradiol 50 milligram implant, but the changes did not keep on carrying on in a logarithmic fashion, but they leveled out. Obviously, one reached a peak in skin collagen and skin thickness, which you then maintained. And this was representative of skin health. Pirard and Freshemont had, at an early date, so in 1999, published a series which showed a correlation between elasticity and skin thickness. And they showed that the thicker your skin, the more elastic you were, but the ones who were on HRT had thicker skin and the most elastic skin of the whole group. So the important thing is that changes with estrogen use are independent of aging. And estrogens have been shown by various other workers to reduce skin wrinkles, to increase skin water holding capacity, and this is because glycosaminoglycans molecules themselves, which retain a lot of water and are responsible for the texture of skin and for the tone of skin, do change very rapidly in response to estrogens. They are the first to respond. And in some rat studies, they've shown to have as much as 80 to 90% water increase in the dermis in castrated rats after they had their estrogens replaced. The epidermis itself responds to estrogens. You can see increases in skin keratinocytes and in papillae that anchor the epidermis to the dermis. Now, we all know how women after the epidermis after menopause, older women have got very thin skin. Here, these women had about 3 layers of keratinocytes, which then increased to about 6 or 7 cells in depth. The epidermis itself had better hydration, so there was less scaling, and we do know that there are estrogen receptors, both alpha and beta, both in the epidermis and in the dermis. Looking at SERMs, well, SERMs, not a lot of work has been done on SERMs in the skin. Tamoxifen, raloxifene, bazoxifene are the 3 SERMs that have been looked at. We all know that they prevent bone loss and reduce the potentiality to fracture. The effects on skin, however, have been very poorly studied. There is no reason to believe that serums with their effects on bone do not have similar effects on the skin. In fact, we do know that, for example, when it comes to vaginal skin, roloxifene and benzotoxifene and tamoxifen do keep the vagina well hydrated and prevent atrophy. But this is still an area that needs studying. If you look at the T-sex, the combination of BZA and CEE, we also know that apart from reduction in hot flushes, which is also a skin manifestation, there is a reduction in vulvar and vaginal atrophy. So serums are interesting, but more work needs to be done. As regards wound healing, there's several studies now that have shown that estrogens or estrogen deplete women have got better wound healing than women who are estrogen deprived. Estrogens introduced in postmenopausal women reduce wound size and stimulate matrix deposition, both in human and in rat skin. We carried out studies in other organs that were collagen containing. We looked at the carotid artery. By using high-frequency ultrasound, an apparatus that was produced by Minhorst from Germany, we were able to measure very accurately the media. Now, the media in the carotid is virtually completely composed of collagen. And you can see that there were increases in a dose-related fashion. You can see the women who were on oral HRT, mostly conjugated equine estrogens, had a thicker media compared to the postmenopausal controls. These are all postmenopausal women, whereas women on implants had the highest media of the whole group. Now, having a thick, healthy media means that you've got a more elastic media, and this has been shown. A more elastic media means that you've got a less rigid carotid artery that makes you less prone to having strokes or thrombotic events. If we look at the intima media ratio, which is an index of atherosclerosis, if you like, you can see that with oral HRT with implants, we had the thinnest intima media ratio of the whole group, whereas controls had a thicker intima media ratio. Now, once again, this is a reflection of the potential to form atherosclerosis, and it's also a reflection of elasticity of the carotid artery itself. So we were quite pleased with these published results. So you look at compliance itself, other workers, given it on in menopause by relatively recent work, was able to show that compliance was lower in estrogen deficient women, and women who had a hysterectomy with a BSO compared with women who had retained their ovaries. So artery stiffening as well was related to correlated to the estrogen status of a woman. So estrogen deficient women had stiffer arteries, which also reflected our own studies. Now, I think we'll just say a couple of words on muscle. But we don't have, for reasons of time, we will not dwell too much on muscle. Muscle has been shown to respond in the same way. Estrogen repeat women have sustained less damage to their muscles. They have sustained less damage during exercise to their muscles, and muscle atrophy after the menopause cannot be compensated by exercise alone. The loss that is done in tone and in atrophy and in bulk as a result of estrogen deficiency cannot be replaced through exercise alone or exercise, although exercise is useful. But since we're talking mostly on collagen and connective tissue, I will stick to that because we now have got some very interesting work on this. Nobody believed that we could influence type 2 collagen. Collagen, as you know, comes in different types. Type 1 is in bone, type 1 and 3 is in the dermis of the skin, and cartilage is mainly type 2. There is a difference with age in the vertebral discs, in that they become thinner, and the sticulus pulposus here becomes harder. With a loss of vascularity in the sides, you get more hypoxic molecules in the middle, which are less hydrophilic, so they're less spongy, and their elasticity is reduced. There is also a change from type 2 collagen to type 1, making it stiffer. And here you've got the functions of the discs, which are summarized. They are responsible for 20% of the column height. They allow flexion and extension of the spine. They act as shock absorbers to spinal columns. And if any of these three are interfered with, you can imagine that there is going to be an impact on osteoporotic compression fractures, which indeed is what we found. And one thing that both Marco Gambacciani and we found, our group found, was that once again, you had this sharp decline in intervertebral disc height measured on all the densitometers with menopausal age. Once again, from the age of 40 here, 46 to 60, you had a loss of about 50% in disc height. Now this must be important. And this did not correlate to age alone, but correlated to menopausal age. We had the same finding here in a group of over 1,000 women, 1,080 women. You see that when we divided women by quintiles, you can see the sharp decline at around the age of the menopause, when 30% of this height is lost. And these are highly significant changes compared to women in their 40s and women at 45. You can see that you've got highly significant changes here compared to here, highly significant changes compared to here. So once again, these are significant differences. If you look at different groups within the study, or this is actually an earlier study, you can see that women who had sustained osteoporotic fractures had the thinnest discs of the whole group. The untreated postmenopausal discs group also had thinner discs when compared to premenopausal women, but women with the best intervertebral discs, the thickest intervertebral discs, and here we're looking at D1 to D3, which means the disc between L1 and L2, L2 and L3, L3 and L4. They had the thickest discs of the whole group. What's interesting here is that these osteoporotic fractures also had very thin discs. So this suggested that there was some etiological factor in play here with osteoporotic fractures. We looked at this current group that we have only just analyzed, and I would like to point out that here there are meant to be 3 stars, highly significant differences between biphosphonates and untreated women, and between biphosphonates and premenopausal women. Here you can see us having grouped up our patients, our well over 1,000 patients, here 1,080 patients, into untreated, into premenopausal, untreated, women on calcium only, women on strontium ranelate, which has now been withdrawn, biphosphonates, and HRT. So the HRT group, and there should be a highly significant 3 stars here actually, highly significant changes between the discs in treated versus the untreated women, and no change at all compared to premenopausal. But the interesting group are these biphosphonates here, which was not neutral. The biphosphonate group had thin intervertebral discs. So this suggests that biphosphonates are not just neutral when it comes to this, but can actually be deleterious. Why is this so? Well, this has been shown in our previous studies, and we are worried of it because biphosphonates are not neutral when it comes to angiogenesis. Biphosphonates are anti-angiogenetic. So the fact that they are anti-angiogenetic might have some effect on the disc itself. This might explain the etiology, say, of jaw fractures, because the jaw is an area that has a very brisk blood supply, and as other atypical fractures, you might have it biphosphonates. This needs certainly to be studied, collaborated, and we need to really see what's happening at vertebral disc level in women who've been on chronic biphosphonates. If you look at the correlation to T-scores, the osteoporotic women have got highly significant differences compared to women with a normal bone density, and the osteopenic women once again have highly significant differences compared to these women up here who are normal. So there is a correlation between osteopenia and osteoporosis as determined by these scores, the correlation between them and the height, the thickness of their discs. Some brief words on SERMs. SERMs have been approved for osteoporosis. As you know, doxycycline and bisloxifene have been approved in the treatment of osteoporosis. Do they exert any effect on cartilage? Do they prevent osteoarthritis? Well, the answer is we don't know. There is one study here by Yaoping Xiao that has suggested that arthritis is much improved in women who are on SERMs. But once again, this is an area that needs further study. So let's just look at osteoporotic fractures now. We know that the very large majority of osteoporotic fractures, particularly vertebral fractures, occur in women who have got a normal bone density. Only 14% of osteoporotic fractures have a low BMD. So there must be other extraosseous, other etiological factors that are accounting for the other fractures. The extracellular matrix itself, apart from the bone mineral density itself, come into play here. There's a collagen component in the bone itself. There's glycosaminoglycans, which is calcified in the bone itself, and there's elastin. So any change in any one of these other parameters can lead to stiffer bone and bone that is thinner, more liable to fracture. We know that we have this similar decline that we saw with skin collagen with vertebral discs after the menopause, related to the menopause, sharp decline as a woman becomes estrogen deficient by about 10% of her bone mass. And this can be prevented by oral or transdermal HRT, whichever route you might choose, you will have an improvement in your bone mass. But not only that, you will have an improvement in your fracture rate. We now know that HRT will prevent fractures. This work has been around for 30 years, it's been confirmed by the WHI, and we know that this is one way of improving your bone. But are you improving your bone mineral density alone, or are you also improving your connective tissue? And our suggestion is that you are improving connective tissue within the bone itself. The non-osseous elements are improving, and therefore this bone is not only looking better, but it actually is less stiff and stronger. Once again, bone mineral density corresponds with biological elasticity in bone, whereby PRI fracture more. Once again, was able to show that the better bone on women on HRT in particular was more elastic and less liable to fracture. So, I would like to conclude here by saying that skin thickness and skin collagen content is modified by the menopause and by HRT. We are suggesting that skin collagen changes actually reflect skin collagen changes elsewhere, but also collagen changes in other organs such as blood vessels and bone. The muscle bulk itself, which I did not have time to show you here, is negatively impacted by the menopause. This is with age. It is suggested that HRT blunts that negative impact, but certainly exercise without hormones is not enough. And this has also been shown to be true in men, by the way, who have been subjected to orchidectomy as a result of prostate cancer. Exercise will not compensate for the lack of sex steroids. Hormone-treated and premenopausal women have thicker discs than untreated premenopausal women, so certainly there is a direct effect on the discs themselves, and the alterations in the extracellular matrix in intervertebral discs appear to be intimately related to the menopausal process. The loss of disc height not only contributes to the shortening of a woman postmenopausally, not only contributes to her changing her axis and becoming with scoliotic changes occurring, but this disc height itself might predate osteoporotic fracture and indeed contribute to women who have a stiffer spine, fracturing their vertebrae more easily. And the last thing I'd like to say is that the investigation into estrogen-like compounds such as SERMs and T-sex is promising, but a lot more work needs to be done on the extraosseous compartment, on collagen, muscle, and the skin itself, including vaginal skin. And certainly when it comes to collagen, dose matters. You get a better result once you use appropriate doses for that particular component. Now, of course, there's a threshold. Too much will not improve your skin at all, will not improve your collagen at all, and might even be deleterious, but too little might not give you the optimum response. So thank you very much. Hello? Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this will conclude the presentation and the webinar. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Professor Brincat, and all the attendees for being here today. Just a quick reminder, you will receive a brief survey that pop up when I end the webinar. And we appreciate your response. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.